Hello and welcome to another edition of Pulp Picks. My name is Patrick.
I'm Fritz.
And we're here to give you this week's reading recommendations on New Comic Book Day, which is about to be consolidated into all comics are going to be just...
Well, we say about to, but I think it's like July. But...
Yeah. Well, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, there was lots of good books this week,
Mm-hmm.
and we like to narrow it down to pick each and then a consensus pick. Mm-hmm. So if you're just joining us for the first time, that's how we're going to do it. And let's dive right in with your pick there, Fritz.
Yeah, so my pick, and you'll notice this, it's a kind of
Marvel week.
It's a Make Mine Marvel week.
Yeah.
My pick it's also all returning champions, because I think every one of these we've had something on here before for
we
it.
Have.
But yep, mine this week is Resurrecting Magneto issue 2. This is chronicling. So if you've been out of the know on the X-Men stuff for a bit, short version, Magneto died a while back. Things aren't going great for mutants right now, so
No.
Storm has gone to the Aetherlab to try and bring him back to help him out. Turns out Magneto, not exactly that he likes being dead necessarily, but he really doesn't want to be alive anymore.
Yep.
And this issue really gets into the guilt that is his character is constantly suffering under. Just his entire existence, he's trying to kind of sort through it in this spleen, trying to measure the good against the bad of what he's done. And he doesn't like what he sees, or in a lot of ways what he doesn't see, because he doesn't really have eyes in this. Yeah. But it's basically, this whole issue is Magneto grappling with the weight of how a lot of his history has been kind of a contradictory character at points, because oftentimes he's known nowadays for a lot of stuff that Claremont did with him, kind of making this more sympathetic, you understand his whole thing. You do also have to kind of rationalize that against it in some of his other turns, where you can be more of a mutant supremacist character. He's a bit more violent and aggressive towards humanity and other mutants. And a lot of this issue is Magneto dealing with that, and especially some of his more recent transgressions. There's a lot of good stuff in here going back to his roles in the Sabretooth series from a couple years ago, which the current Wolverine comic is also dealing with repercussions of that. His part he played in the stuff with Wanda a couple years ago, where she died, but then there was a whole conspiracy about how she died that he was involved with.
Yeah.
And even just everything he's done since the creation of Krakoa, what morals he's had, what he had to put aside, what he had to embrace to make his dream come true. What did that do to him as a person? And Storm's job here is to kind of show him show him that for all the horrible things you've done, there's also all the good you've done, and Magneto has to decide which one is more important at the end of the day. And it's a fantastic character study. I love each of these issues, and it's going to continue with the next two. It kind of flips between last issue was Storm's perspective on things. This issue is Magneto's perspective on things, and I just love them both so much. And I really hope whatever they do with the relaunch coming this summer, that I don't know, I hope they get to still hang out together, because they are such they have such a great dynamic between each other.
Yeah. And
it ends with a fun little cliffhanger for a new threat has entered the stage here. And I mean, it's an old threat, but a new threat.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. I'm very curious to see what happens with that. But no, it's I don't know, Al Ewing, everything he's been doing with Magneto, and a lot of the other writers with Magneto during the Hulk and Crone era, has just re-solidified how much he is kind of one of the best characters Marvel has in general.
Yes.
Just in really comics, there's really no one else like him in a lot of ways.
Well, he's so complicated. I've been recently reading the classic New Mutants, and he comes on as the teacher after Xavier dies.
Yeah.
And him struggling with trying to be a good mentor to these kids and get them on board with what he's trying to do. And after he's been a straight up villain and he knows that, it's and he's the first one to cut a deal with Emma Frost, so far as I know, so he's such an interesting character. He's got such an interesting background of he knows what's right. He just doesn't know how to get there, and he's
Mm-hmm.
constantly struggling with that and changing his approach, and it makes for great reads.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But speaking of people struggling with their approaches, your issue this week.
Yes. So Chip Zdarsky's Avengers Twilight, book number 3. It feels like there should have been more than this already, because this story is moving so. It feels like there's so much packed into each issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think we picked 1 and 2, didn't we? Or did we skip 2?
We definitely picked 1. I think we might have skipped on 2.
Yeah. Well, the gist of it is it's a future in which the Avengers had an encounter which went horribly wrong each day.
Mm-hmm.
And so the world kind of rejected the whole concept of Avengers, and out of that came this kind of totalitarian rule of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But most people living in it don't realize that that's, they're well fed and everybody's taken care of and all of these things. The problem is
there's a lot of soft power to cover up the hard power.
Correct. The problem is if you speak out against the government at all, you just straight disappear.
Mm.
And it's being run by Tony Stark's son. He's kind of and he's also a puppet. There are players behind it that are using him, but he's a major contributor to this new government. Well, Steve Rogers had the super soldier serum removed, and so on and so forth. Luke Cage and his group, Cage and Matt Murdock and Cap were still hanging out in the park as old men together, and out of it comes the realization that something is way worse than Cap really thought, and Luke has a group of freedom fighters. So now Cap is involved in that, and he's reacquired the super soldier serum. And then last issue, he found out that Tony Stark's brain is being kept alive and used to keep the government running in keeping the thumb on the people. So Cap is going to try to save him. Man, it gets hairy fast. The art in this is so great. Daniel Acuna, I think that's how you say it.
I think so.
Just kills it. The action is great. There's a scene where Cap walks up behind somebody from the because he's sneaking into this facility. He walks up behind somebody in the shadows, and all you can kind of see is his chin and his mouth, because the rest of it's kind of darked out, right? And he's walking up behind somebody. And it's such a cool, Cap doesn't usually get those kinds of panels. It was really cool.
It sounds very Batman-esque.
It was. But through this entire thing, Cap keeps over and over and over telling everybody around him, no, I'm going to do this the right way. There's no killing. I'm saving everyone. I'm freeing everyone. The truth has to come out. Truth is more important than stability or perceived happiness or whatever. And it's just, Zdarsky gets Steve Rogers' voice so well in this. It's so amazing to see him fight the unwinnable fight, not give up, and just keep going and going and going for what he knows is right. And it's not him trying to force his vision on other people. It's him trying to allow people to know the full circumstances in which they're living and make a choice for themselves. And so out of this comes a new coalition, and that's as far as I'll go with where the story kind of leaves us, but there's a big cliffhanger at the end of it. Things are starting to develop. Cap is doing what Cap does and inspiring people. And if you love classic Captain America stories, this is definitely one of them. I know that it says Avengers Twilight, but this is really...
I was going to say, the way you're describing this, it sounds like it should be called Captain America Twilight.
Oh, man. It's just... So, we talk about Magneto and what a great character he is and how he's so contradictory and everything. And we were talking a little bit as I was pitching this as one of the picks about how it's easy to see Captain America and assume the Sentinel of Liberty. He just gets up there with a flag and he's wearing a flag and he's all patriotism and all just, America and we're the best country on earth and whatever. But that's not really what he's about. He's about the spirit of America, the concept of America, of freedom and people having choice And whenever anybody tries to leverage their power within the system to start taking away that choice, no matter who it is, he's going to stand up against it. And so the best Captain America stories, and honestly, Marvel's done a great job of handling Captain America throughout his history. It's usually him standing up to power, not taking part as being power. You know what I mean? So this is another one of those great stories. It's got all the elements, and I'm loving the art. I think it just fits this whole thing so well. Yeah. It was great. Yes. So on to our next pick.
This one, A Story About Stories. Mortal Thor, issue 7. So this is kind of like the conclusion to this little mini arc from the last issue where Thor and Loki are kind of trying to explore a previous adventure to understand their current predicament, where there seems to be like these elder gods that are like coming out and causing trouble that may have to do with like their past and like Thor's mother Gaia. And we were talking about this before. This issue in particular is just a really fun, like old-timey, like, oh, here are these like challenges you must pass to like be worthy or so. And they're so fun because like I think my favorite is as you can see here, Thor wrestling a cat, which looks suspiciously like Battle Cat from Masters of the Universe.
First thing I thought when I saw it.
Yeah, but like it's these challenges that like appear like they appear simple at first. Like the challenges, pick up this cat, and then spoiler alert, things go awry. But I don't know. It feels. I love I think there was like the quote at the beginning here is from one of the Poetic Eddas, which is like these like old Nordic like mythologies that obviously a lot of the stuff we know about Thor and his mythology comes from. But just kind of it very much, and I think some of these I know are pulled directly, like the drinking from the horn that never seems to empty,
correct,
kind of stuff. Like pulling from that, but like in the way how Ewing is able to tie that into like the greater like mystery and like threat of like the Utgard gods is very interesting.
He's obviously done his homework because this is all based heavily in mythology. These are all these tests were all familiar to me. But the execution of it was so good. And I really love it when they're able to kind of weave in the mythology that some of this is based on deftly so that you kind of, that that's what they're doing, but they're doing it subtly enough to keep you along for the ride and the suspension of disbelief.
And I also love that, like, even though it is like very steeped in like this old mythology, like it's still about like characters telling each other stories and how those can change over time and what those changes might mean. Like there's a bit where like Loki like telling the story is just like, wait, was that name right? And it's just like you have to wonder, just like, was that important that he'd remember the name wrong? Did he remember the name wrong?
Right. Well, and yeah, he even pauses for a second and thinks like, hey, is this story changed? And if it is, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing for it. We have to push through and get to the end regardless. And we also have happening in the background, which is not a spoiler because it happened last issue.
Yeah.
We've got Enchantress reading the, she's got the comic book that all of this is happening.
Yeah, she's reading this comic as it's happening. Yep. Like it's
so and that really makes you wonder, like, are they just spying on them or are they influencing them at the same time? Because she's got I'm blanking on his name, Minotaur dude.
Dario Agger.
Yeah, Dario Agger. Yeah. And obviously she's manipulating him. There's a point at which she pats him on the head, and it's just, it's so condescending.
Yeah, like Scourge is like being like typical serially Scourge, and she's like, "No, Dario's our friend."
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's so good. Ewing's just killing it. We've got 2 Ewing books up here and a Zdarsky book, and I would guess that we probably pick more Ewing and Zdarsky than we do any other authors at this point.
I'm trying to, like, the only other one I think who might get up here quite as much is, like, Hickman definitely gets up here for pretty frequently.
Yeah, Tynion.
Yeah, I feel like there's someone else. Like, I know, like, be super obvious next time it comes through, but, like...
Yeah.
I don't know. All of them hit on all cylinders this week in particular, but I just why do there have to be so many good comics back?
I know. Everything that I read this week was great. The Giant Size Fantastic Four was a lot of fun. I'm still really loving Rare Flavors. That book has been so good. Ram V.
Ram V might be the one I'm forgetting because spoiler, both Rare Flavors and Detective were also most up here.
Yeah,
but
it's been so good. And there's a ton of stuff to choose from, whether you're into something that's more like murder mystery or horror or, sword and sandals fantasy kind of stuff. There's a couple Conan books up this week.
We've got a reprint of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees.
That's been so good.
If you like cuddly animals and horrible violence.
Yeah, and if you've been hearing the buzz about that, because that's one of the buzziest books out there right now, but you haven't been able to get a copy because nobody's been able to get a copy of number one. They're going for stupid money right now. Yeah. This is the third printing of number one, and we've got a number of copies. So head on into the store here and get it. And then, sci-fi. There's some return of cartoon favorites from childhood and so forth. It's just all kinds of good stuff. Oh, a good Western by Scott Snyder. There's just so many comics to choose from. It's not all just capes and tights. I know that I say that a lot, but people have a lot of misconceptions.
Ignore the fact that we do often pick capes and tights.
Yeah, for sure. Well, get in here yourself and check it out. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, leave some comments, and let us know what you're enjoying. And we'll be back next week because there will be more great comics next week. And until then, enjoy the reading, be safe, and we'll see you later.
And hey, if you want devil somna. I didn't realize you were drinking. I'm sorry about that.